authors, filmmakers, entertainment, and all your listening needs. Listen now to Talk Now Radio, where no topic is taboo.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Talk Now Radio, listener-supported radio where no topic is taboo, and your support keeps it that way as it keeps the censorship out. Today, we're going to be talking to James Nichols, and I'm going to talk to him about Mars colony. And since we've set this here interview up, we've decided to add on another area of research he's doing on the new Aon of Horus. Because these two have links to each other, we think they would blend together very well. So you're going to kind of, I guess, in a sense, get a little bit of a double treat here today. So, Jim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine, Royce. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing just great.
You sound like you're doing good.
A lot better than I was last week.
Okay.
I had pneumonia.
Oh, wow. Who gets pneumonia in the summertime?
I've had it 9 times since last Christmas.
No kidding.
Yeah. Anyway, I want to let everybody know the call-in number is 832-632-7904. And if you want to learn more about Jim, you can go to thewebmatrix.net/Jim Nichols UFO, or you can Google James Nichols, and you'll find his site on the Google results page, and that might even be easier than remembering the URL. So, James, I understand that you don't have any books out about anything, or at least not yet, am I correct?
I did a book many years ago about my UFO art, but I don't have any books based on all the blogs research that I've done since then.
That's fine. I just wanted to check and make sure in case you did,
sure.
You could, tell people about it if you wanted to.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So, like I said, I come across your secret Mars colony deal. Now, have you been able to find evidence, because I didn't get a chance to read that particular article in depth, that there was a colony on Mars? Because I know that we had, what was his name? Andrew Basaggio, who had some pictures of stuff up there.
Well, Andrew Basaggio was a lawyer from up in Washington State who claimed that actually he had been invited to a CIA jump gate in Los Angeles, where he was teleported to Mars back during the 1980s, I believe. And his story is so fantastic, it's so far out that a lot of people think it's crackpot. But anyway, what's really interesting is that back in 2001, the federal government got linked up with a project which is involving advanced nanotechnologies and super advanced high-tech technologies, which was actually talked about by, what's his name? Anyway, the government, the National Science Association, or National Science Foundation, admitted that they were developing teleportation technologies. So it's like, wait a minute, that makes you go back and reassess what Andrew Basaggio was talking about, that maybe this isn't as fanciful as we thought it was.
We just didn't have all the information at the time.
Exactly, as always.
Well, the interesting thing about that is I've talked to him on my show, and I've also talked to Dwight Eisenhower's great-granddaughter, I think it is, Laura.
Yeah, Laura Eisenhower.
And she's making a similar claim to Andrew Basaggio.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Which again makes you wonder about Andrew Basaggio. I mean, why would an ex-president's granddaughter make such a claim after all?
Well, that's very interesting, and that can kind of relate to this other stuff about NASA's occult history that might lend a little more credibility to that story too. Right.
Now that new Aon of Horus deals a lot with the occult symbology and technology of the NASA up there. And if I'm not mistaken, didn't Mike Barra and Richard Hoagland also find out a lot of information about this?
Absolutely. In fact, it was I just stumbled upon a video lecture on YouTube from Richard Hoagland that was done way back in 1997, all about NASA's occult background and the occult involvement within NASA. And this was this is back. He did it in '97, and I'm just hearing about it now. This is a complete revelation to me because I was not aware of the profound occult influences within NASA, and so I went back to Hoagland's book, Dark Mission, that he wrote with Mike Barra, and yes, indeed, it goes into great depth about that, and the involvement with Jack Parsons, who was the founder of Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, and then Jack Parsons' involvement with Satanist Aleister Crowley. So
I was never aware of that until yesterday.
Right.
Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
This has been a very, very carefully hidden secret. So. Yeah,
I would gather that it really has, because I mean, some of the stuff that I read on that article, like the connections between Parson and Aleister Crowley, have not made it into the public schools, or it doesn't appear to be common knowledge talked about online a lot, or you don't see it posted in groups a lot. So it's kind of like an unnoticed little history going on there, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, very secret history going on, right? So, well, Aleister Crowley's a very interesting fellow, because he claimed that back in as far back as 1904, he was in contact with extra-dimensional extraterrestrials, both in 1904 and then again in 1918. And he was allegedly contacting entities that look very similar to what we have come to commonly refer to as the Greys. So this was happening way, way back even, around the time of World War I. So it's like, this is a hugely important chunk of the UFO extraterrestrial alien issue that has been, very carefully overlooked.
So, would you say that there's probably a livable colony that might be actually occupied, maybe by our government and maybe extraterrestrials at the same time, up at Mars? Is a high likelihood?
I would say, in light of this information I've just come across from Hoagland, that it's very likely that there was a very intense secret project put forth probably after World War I and after World War II to seek out these, to actually go to Mars, because some of the extraterrestrials or extra-dimensionals that Aleister Crowley spoke with or contacted suggested that there were specific artifacts waiting to be found on Mars that would have great significance to occult secret societies, both the Nazis and the Freemasons here on planet Earth.
Well, that would really make a lot of sense if you go back and read Sitchin's work. He documented in some of his books about one of the Anunnaki being banished to Mars, and who knows what kind of artifacts they left up there while they were there, if that what he interpreted was correct.
Right. So it just gets very interesting, and you see the involvement of after World War II with the Nazis having tremendous staffing within Mars. And, of course, Wernher von Braun's ambition, even going back to when he was a kid, when he was just starting to play around with rocket development, long before the war, that his ambition was to go to Mars. And the Apollo Moon project for Wernher von Braun was just a side note. What he really wanted to do was go to Mars, not so much the moon. He wanted to go to Mars.
So, if there is any of our people, or even extraterrestrials on Mars, these artifacts, I'm thinking, must be really hard to find, or they would have found them already.
Well, that's just it. I think they did find them. It's like they seem to pick out very specific locations on Mars for their landings, as if they already knew ahead of time exactly where to go. So it's like what you hear what NASA tells to the public and what NASA really knows deep down inside.
Two different animals altogether.
Two different animals, and one thing you have to understand is that at the highest levels of secret societies, that's why they call them secret societies. They have deep, dark secrets, and they make sure that the general public does not know about them. So when you look at the profound involvement within NASA of secret societies, you kind of get the sense that, well, they have their own agendas, their own projects that they would guarantee that the public will never ever find out about. So it's almost like the National Aeronautics and Space Administration is a private entity, a private operation for just the high initiates within these secret societies.
And it's kind of like a proving ground for people that get promoted up there. They have to go through certain levels to get into the know, into the clique.
Right. That's how the secret societies work. And you don't share your secrets from the very highest level with the profane mass population.
Which that seems to be a going trend within the priesthood as well.
Well,
all the ancient priesthoods throughout time have
absolutely
had the teaching for the outer circle and the teacher for the inner circle.
Exactly. And what was good for ancient Egypt is good for NASA. So it's like you see the same structure, even today.
Well, what do you suppose some of these artifacts might be that's so valuable to everybody?
Oh, well, you can let your imagination run wild on that. I would say, given the focus or the intent of secret societies, it would have to be some artifact that would give them even greater power than they have now. The ultimate gain, or the ultimate game plan for secret societies and so forth, going back to Egypt and so forth, is power. They want to gain power, mastery over, the ultimate mastery would be to manipulate three-dimensional reality. And to gain
AKA
power,
time and space-time continuum.
Bingo, you got it. That's it. So this has always been the ultimate goal of secret alchemical knowledge.
They could do that. That's almost like next to the power of creation.
It's the power. They want to harness the power of God. They want to put the power of God in their own hip pockets. That's what this is all about.
Which has a power nobody should have, in all honesty. I mean, after all, who could really handle that much?
Well, that's just it. And it's like, you look at the bankers and the Rothschilds, and you look at that whole history. These are people who are obsessed with power. They can't get enough power. So it's like anytime they stumble on some kind of, arcane mystery or secret occult knowledge, they're going to jump on it because they want it for their own, to advance their own power. That's the obsession. That's the goal of everything on this planet, it seems to be.
What that question begs, at least in my mind, though, is why would extraterrestrials in ancient times in the past have left that around for humans to stumble upon one day when they already had the upper hand themselves?
Well, you could look at another way. I don't know that they're even extraterrestrial. I think they're extra-dimensional. They're hyperdimensional entities that use this lust for power as a means of mind control over the ruling elite of this planet. So actually you have an off-planet hyperdimensional control system here that is using, the greed and the obsession for power within the highest elite as a means of controlling the human population in general.
Kind of like similar to what people have said that HAARP was being done then, in other words.
Yeah, yes.
Kind of like a radar or a mind beam, so to speak, something that puts thoughts in people's head without them knowing the thoughts are there?
Well, exactly. And at the highest levels, of esoteric or ancient occult knowledge, and this, the alchemists, back before the Middle Ages understood this, that we lived in what they called a field of ether. They called it the ether. And, today modern science calls it the quantum field. But they understood that you could access extra-dimensional, extraterrestrial consciousness through the ether. Like this is how telepathy and remote viewing actually works. It's like you're moving through this subtle energy field which permeates the whole universe.
Now, if I understood the Akashic record, which is what I've heard it called, correctly, you're also able to kind of view it like you would a movie going through fast forward of all times from the beginning to the end.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Which means you could go in there and cherry pick times to change them.
I don't know if you can change them, but you could have access to knowledge both from the past and the future. Time is relative to our 3D physical 5 sense reality here, and that was part of the occult alchemical science, that you could access knowledge from the past, from the future. You could access knowledge from other places on the planet or other places in space, because that knowledge actually exists outside of time and space.
Well, in your opinion, do you think this information is kind of indicating that there's going to be a return of, say, like the Anunnaki gods, or do you think it's a situation where they never really left, or is this going to be more of a interdimensional type thing?
That's a really good question, and I don't know that I even have a handle on it. I would point to a lot of the posturing that you see coming out of the Vatican right now, a radical 180-degree turn of policy where the Vatican is suggesting that we get ready because the extraterrestrials are our alien brothers, our alien brethren, are about to make an appearance here on planet Earth. And, it wasn't that long ago when the Catholic Church was burning at the stake anybody who would make that kind of a assertion. And so now that you see the Vatican is saying, well, it's like we might have to welcome our brothers from other planets, and they may have a more advanced gospel than we do. And this is the kind of stuff that's actually coming out at high levels within the Vatican right now. So it's like, what do they know that we don't know?
Well, an interesting thing about that and what you're mentioning on that is some of the study that I've done online has indicated there's many out there who believe the Rothschilds and the Illuminati are the actual funders and the main cogs behind the Vatican nowadays, which is also behind the same thing with the Freemasons, which would again put them behind NASA indirectly, if not directly. So there could be a whole big tie-in there.
Absolutely. Well, you really have to go back and study the history of the occult. What, people, talk about the occult. It gets bandied around here and there. So, I don't want to talk about the occult. It's scary. It's, it's demons and stuff like that. But you really need to understand the Illuminati, to understand the Jesuits, to understand the Vatican. You have to go back and understand the history of the occult.
Well, I think that, and I think you also have to kind of trace their family bloodlines to see how the power has been in the same people all throughout time, in other words.
Well, it really goes back, the core issue here goes back to the ancient Hebrew people who, when they were in exile, the Hebrew people were captive in Babylon. And a lot of the Hebrew priests and so forth adopted the occult magic ritual belief systems of the Babylonians. And then they later, from that, they created the Kabbalah. The Kabbalah was a collection of alchemical, magical codes and incantations and so forth that were preserved in Israel for centuries. And it wasn't until about the 12th century A.D. when one of the French monarchs discovered knowledge of this Kabbalah. So when he sent the Knights Templar down to Solomon's Temple to discover or to steal these secrets, which apparently they were able to do. They somehow they had accessed a copy of the Kabbalah, which of course at that time was only written in Hebrew. So they brought this Kabbalah text back to France, and from that point it was translated into Latin. So you see that the Kabbalah goes from Hebrew to Latin, and the secret Latin teachings of the Kabbalah become the core teachings within the Church of Rome. And from that point, it splintered, and it became part of the Illuminati. It became part of the Freemasons. It became part of the Jesuits. All this secret occult knowledge just spread throughout Europe after the 12th century and after the original Hebrew Kabbalah had been translated into Latin.
Now, my understanding was that the classical Church of Rome's teaching and the teaching of the Kabbalah were like two totally different animals. Unless my understanding is incorrect.
Well, that's probably what they'd like you to think.
I wouldn't doubt that for a minute.
That's what they'd like you to think. It's like the secrets of the Kabbalah are so powerful. You're going to want the people who contain this power are going to want to keep it as secret as possible. So that's where that's one of the reasons why the church burned the Templars, the Knights Templar, because the church wanted to have exclusive access to their secrets. And they didn't want to share those secrets with the Templars. And, the 12th century, the Templars had gained more power, more wealth than the church itself. So along comes the King of France, who has to go begging to the Templars for money because the Templars ran his treasury. And so the King of France says, well, geez, if you guys would make me an honorary Templar, then I could access my finances more easily. And the Templars said, no, we're not going to allow you to become a Templar. Well, that really pissed off the King of France, so he went to the Pope, and between the King of France and the Pope, they conjured up a program to eliminate the Templars altogether. So the Templars were labeled as Antichrist, as heretics, and they were all ordered to stand trial for the Inquisition. And at first, the Templars, they said yes, that we are followers of the Antichrist and so forth, which earned them at least life imprisonment. And then the Templars turned around and recanted their confession, which condemned them to be burned at the stake. So anyway, you see, have this huge conflict with, it's a battle for power. It's a battle for this occult power as who's going to be top dog and who's going to have the exclusive control and mastery over this secret occult knowledge.
So actually, in all honesty, for ages now, it doesn't matter if it's Christian, Cathar, Jesuit, whatever, Quakers. None of them have really got mankind's interest at heart. They're all kind of like inner squabbling amongst themselves for who gets the top of the ladder, and they each have their own little privy views.
Right. And then you throw the Nazis in this. The Nazis, the tradition of the Nazis, or National Socialism, goes back to the secret societies of the Teutonic Templars, who also had access to this secret occult information. So it's like, yeah, it's just a big free-for-all. And, God almighty, medieval Europe was just a rat's nest free-for-all for all these secret societies, all trying to be top dog and all trying to have the last word in occult magic.
So how would you say the dying God myth that's been replayed so many times through history, Christ being the last one, might fit into this whole entire puzzle? Because, like I said earlier, I think there's a connection between the Aon of Horus and the Christ myth, simply because Horus, to my knowledge, was one of the first dying gods, and Jesus being the last. So where do you think they connect at?
Well, the whole the story of the Trinity in Christianity is actually just a rehash of the astrological mystery schools throughout the Mediterranean that goes back all the way to Egypt, and the myth of Osiris and Isis.
Right.
Isis, Osiris were the primary gods of Egypt, and Osiris was murdered by a god called Set, and was chopped up into multiple pieces, and Isis, through her magic, reassembled Osiris, and then she became impregnated through an immaculate conception. She became impregnated by the restored Osiris and gave birth to Horus. So essentially, Horus is truly the son of God through an immaculate conception. Which
is also a similar thing that happened at the Tower of Babel. I'm assuming after that with Tammuz, in other words.
Yeah, you see this play out over and over and over throughout the Middle East. And if you really dig into it even deeper, it's an allegory about the solar equinox. How the sun in the wintertime, the ancients, when the sun got further south in the wintertime, the ancient peoples were afraid. They thought the sun was dying. And they said, well, if the sun dies, we'll all die. There won't be any food, there won't be any light, there won't be any seasons and all that stuff. So they carefully marked the progression of the solar equinox in the sky, and they noted that at December 25th, the sun was at the lowest point in the southern sky, and it was at that lowest point for 3 days. So it's like the sun died for 3 days, but then after the 3 days, the sun starts to make its progression back into the northern hemisphere to bring to where it restores the spring, and life is renewed, and as if a resurrection took place. So you see this astrological, astronomical underplay or underpinning of the whole Isis, Osiris, Horus mythology, which goes into Babylon, which just gets rehashed all throughout all the Mediterranean cultures, and eventually gets established in Rome as the story of Jesus.
Yeah, and, I've read about this here before, but the one thing that keeps seeming to stick out to me, and I could be wrong about this, is it doesn't just seem to be a story of the rising and setting of the sun and, things in the immediate present, but there's some angles to it that seem to me to be like a foretelling of times to come. For instance, the part where Jesus said, when you see the guy carrying the water, follow you him, or however that's worded. Some people have mentioned that that's talking about maybe the age of Aquarius, and I'm thinking that maybe the age of Aquarius and the Aon of Horus are probably the same thing.
That's a good point. That is a good point. And there's so much of this stuff gets rehashed with different names, but I'm sure at the highest levels of occult understanding, like if you're a 33rd degree Freemason, you'll understand how this all all this stuff relates together. But my understanding, and I look at the story of Jesus. There's the traditional Catholic version of Jesus' life, but I want to know who is the real guy, who is the real. I believe that there was a real person who lived in Galilee, in the first century A.D. that was such a brilliant teacher and such a powerful teacher that Roman authorities said, we've got to alter this story and like disinformation.
Lose control of the masses.
Right. We have to, this guy's teachings are so radically, anti-authoritarian that we have to kind of, switch it around so the emphasis is not so much on his teachings. We don't want the masses to understand his teachings. We'll switch it around so they make him an object of worship, which will distract the people away from what Jesus was really trying to teach. And so now, we'll make him an object of worship, along with Horus and Tammuz and all these other popular mythologies that were so prevalent throughout the Mediterranean. It's like so in that way the Roman Empire could create a new mythology that would be comfortable with all the other pagan mythologies throughout the empire.
Well, but
in the shuffle, the real Jesus gets lost in the shuffle in all this. Right.
I was going to say, though, I've recently interviewed a guy named Daniel Unterbrink, and he has a book out called Judas the Galilean. And in it, he theorizes that this character this Jesus Christ was built upon was probably this Judas the Galilean, as he had quite a following and was had his teachings were dead set against Rome.
Right.
And he was causing an uprising.
Right.
And they believe what they'd done was just turned around and rewrote his story to suit their purposes, in other words.
Exactly. And when you go back and look at the Council of Nicaea, where Constantine they were all trying to hammer out a doctrine, a single monolithic doctrine of what, the new Christian religion would be. You see, you just don't know what was true and what was fictionalized and how much radical editing went into the story, the actual story of the real Jesus.
That is true. Very true. But another thing I couldn't help but notice is if you compare the Old Testament to the New Testament, the gods are like two totally different people. They have two totally different instructions, different feast days and worship days, etc.
Right. Yeah, I think that's one of the main problems with the Judeo-Christian ethic, because it becomes kind of schizophrenic, because, well, which God do we believe? We believe the Old Testament God, or do we believe Jesus? And it's like, one day he's a God of vengeance and wrath, and the next day it's light and love and brotherhood and all this stuff. It's like, well, who's who and what's what?
They tried to blend the two.
Well, they don't blend. That's the problem. They just simply don't blend. And at the end of the day, it makes, the whole Judeo-Christian ethic just totally schizophrenic.
And yet they still hold on to the same recurring theme that has held the masses for over thousands of years.
Right.
That have bought into it.
Right. Well, and the other thing that nobody ever talks about is, most your fundamentalist Christians, hang on every word of the King James Bible as if it was, handed down directly from God. And these people have no clue whatsoever about the depth of the occult influence within the British monarchy that it's unbelievable. It's just it staggers the imagination that because the British monarchs, going back to Elizabeth I, were obsessed with the occult, and they used the occult for power and control. And, it's not like, along comes King James and he's just lily white and, and rewrites the Bible, in his own image. So once again, you see these texts are being edited yet again, and you have no idea how deeply occult the people are who are doing the editing.
And they're still re-editing them to this day as we speak.
So at the end of the day, so you don't know where this is all going. But that's why it's if you're going to be ignorant about the history of the occult, you're not going to be able to understand, the Church of Rome. You're not going to be able to understand the British monarchy. You're not going to be able to understand NASA. So it's like, you have to go back and refigure just about everything here.
That is true. And a lot of people are even totally aware of the fact that the worship day from the Old Testament to the New had never really changed in the Bible from Saturday to Sunday. This was an addition came around in about 363 or somewhere in that range by Constantine. He made that decision.
Well, even before Constantine, the Roman government had already officially declared Sunday as the main holy day of the Roman Empire, because why do you call it Sunday? Because they worship the sun. They worship the sun god. They worship the sun.
Well, see, that's something I've recently been thinking about over the last few years, is about sun worship versus sun worship, changing the U and the O.
Right?
They're really the same exact thing.
Bingo. And I always wondered about that. Why do you call it Sunday? Why do you call it Jesus Day? Why do we still call it Sunday? And it's like so much of this stuff goes.
You call Christmas Christmas, why not Christ's Day?
Right. Well, why do they call it Santa Claus Day?
It kind of makes me wonder if people back in ancient times really were technically worshiping the sun up in the sky.
Absolutely.
Or were they worshiping the Son of God of their day, the Christ of their day, in other words?
Well, the whole thing came from, it spins out of sun worship. I mean, if we, the most primitive culture understood that if we don't have the sun, we're all dead. So the sun must be a magical deity. So what you do, you worship the sun. And you give offerings to the sun. And your offerings might help your crops to grow better. The offering might help you to, hunt deer, or catch fish, or get the basic fundamentals that you need to survive within your little tribe. So in that sense, the whole thing of sun worship evolves out of very, very primitive cultures, but it became a very, very powerful pagan object of worship, and still is to today.
Well, yeah, and you got to stop and think. As long as people are busy worshiping Christ on the cross, or Horus, or Zoroaster, or whoever the person at the time is, they're not looking into the secrets of the occult,
no.
And they're not learning where the power is, because they think they've already found it.
Right.
Christ is their power. He's their shield. This is where you go. This is where you look. While the priesthood is over here saying, well, I got the real knowledge over here.
Right. Yeah, and getting back to Saturday. Why do we call it Saturday? Well, Saturday is Saturn, the day of Saturn worship, which was commonly accepted in ancient Judea. The Hebrews, the Jews, worshipped on their Sabbath day was Saturday, and the ancient Canaanites worship Saturn. They were Saturn worshippers rather than sun worshippers. So you have this conflict between these two holy days.
So who was the actual god, though, of the Canaanite? Oh, that would have been El. So Saturn worship really goes back to El.
Yes, El. So, are these occult traditions, pagan traditions? This throws another thing into the mix that extra-dimensionals or extraterrestrials appeared to these primitives and conned them into believing that they were God and that they wanted to be worshipped. And so a lot of these, a lot of these ancient pagan rituals were influenced by extraterrestrial, extra-dimensionals who didn't have our best interest at heart. Because as I understand it, the god El of the Canaanites was seriously promoted ritual human sacrifice.
Well, I know one thing. If I was God Almighty of the entire universe and I wanted man to worship me, I wouldn't send messages through people who can lie and distort the truth and, Bibles that can be rewritten and religions and all of that.
Sure.
I would plant myself right down here on planet Earth and start zapping people who didn't worship me. If that's all you want, why wouldn't you?
There you go. Well,
I mean, that may sound overly simplistic, but you really got to ask yourself, why would God go to all the trouble with all the in-betweens?
Sure. Well, maybe we've been hijacked into a realm where God can't quite access it. And, you listen to Jesus, his great prayer, the Lord's Prayer is like, he says, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Well, that tells me that earth maybe got hijacked away from heaven. And it's like, how do we get back to that?
Zechariah Sitchin in his writings talks about the bond of heaven and earth and how they were separated by, I want to say it was Enki, but I haven't read those books read them in years, so it could have been one of the other gods. But there was a separation of it, and that could be at the very core of what we're talking about, couldn't it?
Exactly right. There seems to be a separation, and along with the separation, it seems like the human race acquired amnesia, where we don't know what happened. And so we're left, stumbling around in the dark here, trying to figure out what really happened to us. And you have to ask yourself, well, who is going to be served by our amnesia, by our lack of understanding?
The people who are not in amnesia, who have all the answers naturally, and that would go back to the occultists.
Well, or even further, goes one step beyond that. It goes to the hyperdimensional negative entities that may have created all these false religions to begin with, just to keep us under their thumb and to keep us stupid and ignorant and useful, maybe as a cattle farm here, for their purposes.
Yeah, keep everybody looking everywhere but the right place.
Bingo, you got it. Yeah.
Speaking of hyperdimensional physics, I read an article on hyperdimensional physics by Richard Hoagland on his website, and he's done a lot of work about the importance of, I think it was either longitude or latitude 19.5 on almost every planet. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
Do you think there's a connection with that and what's going on here? Like it's maybe you need this here kind of knowledge in order to use the artifacts that are on Mars, maybe?
Well, I think there's at that it's the 33rd degree of is it latitude or longitude? Which one goes east and west? Which one goes east-west? Do you remember?
No, I don't. But now that you mentioned longitude and latitude in number 33,
yes.
I also read a book by Walter Bosley called Latitude 33, Keys to the Kingdom.
Right.
And here on Earth, almost everywhere at latitude 33, there seems to be paranormal activity.
Imagine that.
And that's where you were going, wasn't it?
Yeah. I live like about 100 miles from the 33rd degree. Phoenix, Arizona is right on the 33rd degree. Phoenix, the phoenix bird, is symbol for the 33rd degree in Freemasonry. So it's like, well, duh, call it Phoenix and put it right at the 33rd degree. You think that's an accident? And I look back, I moved to Tucson in 1970, and from up in Ohio, and it's like ever since I've been in Tucson, I've been involved with this UFO research. So it's like, did something magic happen to me? So is there something magic about living at or close to the 33rd parallel? And if you look now, the angle of curvature, the degree that Hoagland is talking about is 19.5. So from the 33rd parallel to the top of the planet, that angle of curvature is 19.5. And it's interesting that Aleister Crowley died in 1947, and 1947 averages out to 19.5. So it's like there's all these weird occult, connections that are just, it's too bizarre just to be coincidence.
Listen, Jim, I just got distracted briefly by Mark Snyder asking me if I had a second. I was telling him I was live with you right now, and I didn't fully catch everything you just said. Did I kind of half hear you say something to the effect of if you're on latitude 33,
yeah,
and you create a line from 33 up to the north or south pole, there's a 19.5 degree angle?
Yeah, that's the curvature, 19.5.
I have been trying to figure out what the connection to 19.5 and 33 is, and you just now solved it for me.
Right. So it's not so much the 19.5 that's important, it's the 33rd degree that's important. And you see that's where Cydonia is on Mars. And you see that's where the landing sites were for Apollo on the moon. So it's like, wait a minute, what, and it's like 33, what's the magic of 33? So, and I can't answer that, but I know it's extremely important to these, the occult groups that are at the head of NASA, and who are even at the head of the Freemasonry, and are probably at the head of the Catholic Church. These people are all profoundly involved in this kind of occult magic.
My guess would be is that latitude is kind of like an overlap between dimensions, probably, where portals can be opened.
Very likely. Now, if you take a circle, if you take a perfect circle, and if you put the pentagram, the hexagram, you put the Star of David inside a complete circle, right? And
Okay.
where the top line goes across the circle, and the bottom line of the triangle goes across the circle, you see that is your 33rd parallel right there. You see what I'm saying?
I think so. I've never really tried that.
Can you visualize that? Take a perfect circle and put a hexagram. Put the Star of David right in the middle of that circle, so that the top of the top line of the triangle touches the edge of the circle. See what I'm saying? That
Right.
is your 33rd parallel right there. So it also has to do, and this is what Hoagland talks about, it has to do with tetrahedral physics. Tetrahedral physics, and you figure the Earth is spinning. This is a spinning tetrahedron inside the planet itself. And that magic line, the 33rd parallel, something magical, something hyperdimensional, is accented, is more powerful at that line. So I'm thinking that's why that's the importance of 19.5, or that's the importance of the 33rd parallel.
Well, you were mentioning in your article on the Aon of Horus, when I read it yesterday, about Taurus, which I found interesting because I, a few years back, interviewed Foster Gamble, and he had been talking about the similar Taurus, where you got a center point of power that just spins and gets bigger and bigger as you go.
Right.
And you're kind of describing the same thing right now.
Imagine that. Yeah, the toroid, well, this all, blends into toroid physics, and I wish, the guy you really need to be talking to is Nassim Harriman, because he can explain this stuff better than I can.
I'm familiar with him, but I can't seem to reach him.
Right. I'm sure he's hard to get. Everybody wants to get a hold of him. But yeah, there is, and this relates. If you took the Star of David and spin it, and you have a spinning toroid field, and there's something powerful, extremely powerful, magical, what have you, about a spinning toroid. And even if you look at the Nazi swastika, it looks like looking down on a spinning galaxy. It looks like a stylized version of a spinning galaxy. Now, if you spun that swastika, it would look just like a spinning galaxy looking down on it. So what we're talking about is directly related to spinning torsion physics. And if you go back even further and you look at some of the discussions from Nikola Tesla understood that spinning torsion physics is how you create galaxies. It's how you create planets. It's how you take the unified field, which is just pure potential energy, not even manifested as energy, it's potential energy, and you create a spin in that energy, in that field, and suddenly you can manifest planets, you can manifest people, animals, whatever you can imagine based out of that spinning energy.
Sounds an awful lot like a singularity, doesn't it?
Right on, yeah. So this and this goes, is this what the ancient Babylonians knew? And if they knew it, how did they know it? Was there an ancient Atlantean culture or super culture, super society, super technological society that once flourished on this planet, and that this was the key to their super fantastic technology, the understanding of spinning torsion physics?
That sounds like that would be the kind of power you were describing in that article that they would be after. You had another name for it, though. I read it just last night, and now my mind's farting. Mira Primis, or
what's that?
What was the name of this here power you was suggesting that the occultist was after?
Materia prima?
Yeah, materia prima. That's the one I'm trying to think of.
Yeah, materia prima is actually the quantum field. It's the fabric of the time-space continuum, but the torsion field is what you use to manipulate and create, multiple realities here, is to spin it, to create a spin within it. And you stop at the fundamental movement of an atom is a spin, a spinning atom. When you spin it, it creates time, space, and gravity. And this was the secret of the Nazi propulsion systems that the Vril Society allegedly gained back in 1919, the secrets of spinning torsion physics. And of course, this is one of the main things that the petroleum companies don't want you to know about, because this is the key to free energy.
And of course, if we had free energy, we don't need to buy anything.
Well, you don't need petroleum, because you're getting the energy directly from the fabric of the time-space continuum itself, which is limitless, free and limitless.
And like you said, Tesla had to be familiar with this. In fact, he is harnessing so much of it, they thought he might have been the one that caused that big boom in Siberia.
Right. Yeah. So, and where was Tesla getting this stuff from? He claimed that he was in touch with
extraterrestrials,
hyperdimensional beings from Mars and whatever. So maybe he was tuned into the same guys that Aleister Crowley was tuned into. I don't know.
And even the Sumerians said that they got their technology from the gods.
Right, exactly.
So do we know that it was any different for them? Was it the extraterrestrial or the interdimensional gods?
Right. It's all the same.
Personally, I believe that there were some gods from other planets, or they were called gods, and there were some from other dimensions. To me, that would make a lot of sense. There's no rule that says you had to have one or the other, in other words.
Right. Yeah.
Not to say that I'm right about that, but I mean, I'm about as good a guess as anybody's.
Well, you give it, we are so backward, and we are so limited, and we only perceive the universe from our own very limited five senses. We think, and we're told by science, that's all there is, and it's just, and if you're dealing with entities that are hyperdimensional who are not limited to five sense, perceptions, five sense reality, it's like, it puts us poor little humans at a great disadvantage of trying to understand the whole big picture of universal realities.
It's also like taking a whole lot of money and sticking it inside of one box, inside of a bunch of boxes, and setting three boxes in a row down and telling somebody one of those boxes has got a whole bunch of money in it. And when a whole certain chunk of them are not going to try to look or not even going to believe, and they'll never access that money simply because they think they were being hoodwinked.
Sure.
So this power is no different as long as we're told it doesn't exist, and, scientifically it's not possible. The church is saying it's simple to go after it. Everybody's like, well, okay, I guess I'll just do this instead.
Sure. So, unfortunately, we're programmed to believe everything that people in authority tell us. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the people in authority are particularly honest. And they're going to tell us what they want us to know.
And even if they was honest, it's not to say they're per se right every time.
Right. Well, I was always kind of skeptical too. I used to believe that this 3D reality was all that there was, and that you can't access information from beyond your five senses until I took a weekend course in remote viewing. I have a good friend here in town, and she's very, very psychic, and I was always very envious of her. And we took this course together in remote viewing, and it's like I knew she was going to whoop my butt because she is so totally psychic. And so we went through the protocols on how to do remote viewing, and then we did some exercises. And lo and behold, I discovered, I'm every damn bit as psychic as she is. And it blew my mind because my logical mind says, looks at the protocols and it says, this is impossible. This is totally illogical. It makes no sense. There's no way I'm going to be able to access information, from beyond space and time by doing these simple exercises. And I proved I was totally wrong. I proved how totally stupid my intellect was, and that there's a portion of my mind, my right brain, is able to access information from beyond space and time. So it was an incredible object lesson for me to see this and to understand this within my own personal mind that this stuff is for real. And this is the same. This is just a very, very basic, kindergarten exercise in occult alchemy. And it's like, yes, there are ways to access information directly from the time-space continuum. And this is a secret that has been known ever since the days of the pharaohs. And I said, well, where did the rest of us get off the track here? But yeah, it made a believer out of me that you can access information just the way,
me too. Especially if I did it.
Just the way the ancients said you could. Only they were much more skilled and they were more highly trained at this kind of information access.
The fact that what you're speaking of is a real phenomena is not a hidden fact anymore. I mean, the military's admitted that they've used the actual technology, and I've even had some of the people they've used on my show before. It's a given that this is a doable thing, and it's pretty widely accepted now. But
right.
That goes on to show you, though, you have to have access to an entirely different dimension, or you just draw a blank trying to go and get information from time and space. Mm-hmm. Like you said, there has to be that other dimension with something in it in order to extract it. You can't extract a coffee out of an empty cup, for example.
That's exactly right.
Now,
so it proved to me that yes, that there is a unified field, that we live in a sea of energy that is vital. It's vibrant. It's incredibly powerful, and it's like we, with our own silly little minds, can access that. We can access that if you understand the techniques to do it.
And if you have the confidence and the belief in yourself.
Well, after I proved it to myself, I thought, wow. And so, but what it taught me, it gave me an appreciation, an even deeper appreciation of my friend who is so psychic, and she does this naturally. I mean, you'd be a total stranger, and you can sit down and chit-chat with her, and she'll start picking out things about you. They say, well, how can you know that? You've never met me before. You don't know who I am. But how did you know that my mother lived here, or that my brother died out here, or that this happened to me, or that happened to me? And she says, well, it's all inside. It's all contained in your energy field. It's all, you carry this information around with you wherever you go. And it's just people who are more sensitive can just tap into that, and they can understand it. Their energy field is interfacing with your energy field, and so that's how they're gaining that, accessing that information.
The thought occurs to me that I would guess the biggest majority of the people that's brought up in one religion or another, especially one of the Abrahamic faiths, these are people who would have trouble with any kind of psychic ability because they've been taught all their life it was simple, taught to shut it down, not to accept it, not to believe in it. And if the people that would probably be more psychic would probably be the people that did not have this kind of upbringing. And that wouldn't necessarily mean they were more psychic so much as they were not trained to shut it off, in other words.
Well, the other thing, and this goes back to the power of the Church of Rome, it's people who just naturally exhibited these kind of tendencies were labeled witches, and they were burned at the stake. So it's like the people in authority didn't want anybody who understood how to access this information. They didn't want them out there in the general public because it would conflict with the power and authority of the church itself. So you had to hunt these people down and kill them. So actually, after butchering thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, the only people you have left who are people who are just a notch above being wild animals.
If they do know anything, they want to shut it down before they get killed.
Sure. So it's like, it's the object was to take this knowledge out of the general population and contain it only at the highest levels within the church or within the authoritarian structure. And then you tell the people, oh no, well-meaning Christians tell you all the time that it tells you in the Bible that magic is evil. Magic is evil, and if you're involved with magic or if you're involved in the occult, you're cursed of Satan. And it's like that, you have to avoid that stuff. When at the very highest levels, and even within the highest levels of the fundamentalist churches, at the highest levels, these people are totally involved in the occult. And at the highest level of the Catholic Church, they're totally involved in the occult. It's like they don't want the competition. They want to be the absolute end of story authority on all this information, on all this knowledge. And they don't want to share it with the general public. So consequently, you have groups like the Illuminati comes along, and that is directly opposed to this kind of attitude of the church, and they become like a counterpoint, antithesis to what the church is trying to do. They want to challenge the church's exclusive access or exclusive control over this information.
So you would say that the Illuminati would probably come closer to being on men's side's kind than the church would.
Well, I think the church kind of created a monster with the Illuminati. I think the Illuminati, they're certainly not lily white, but I can understand their anger and their resentment at how the Church of Rome has treated the mass public so harshly, in order to keep this information all to itself. But now, the Illuminati comes along and they do the exact same thing. then they're caught up in their same lust for control and power as the church was. So it's like, it's a catch-22 always.
A lot of people that I've talked to have never really noticed or talked about the fact that Adam Weishaupt, who is the first Bavarian Illuminati, was originally a Jesuit priest, and who were the Jesuits if not the strong arms of the Catholics? And not only that, he founded the Illuminati, the Bavarian Order, in 1776, which is the same time as the founding of America.
Right.
Now, I have trouble believing that was incidental.
Nothing accidental about that. And I don't know if you've ever taken a stroll through Washington, D.C. and looked at all the incredible Freemason symbology throughout the city. And it's like, wait a minute, the United States is from the get-go a Freemason enterprise. Or
an occult enterprise.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you look up in the rotunda at, Congress, you got the apotheosis of George Washington.
Yeah, it's in the Capitol building, the Capitol Dome.
That's what I'm thinking of, okay.
Yes. Yeah.
So, there, I think is a symbol in that painting, the apotheosis of exactly what you've been talking about this whole show long, grabbing the power of God.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which they believe that their leaders should and could do from the days of George Washington, if not earlier on, I think.
Right. So is that painting of George Washington, is that a symbolic representation saying that, well, good old George is the modern reincarnation of Osiris? Is this relates all the way back, to the mythology that the Freemasonry is founded on, which is the mythology of ancient Egypt.
Which a lot of people will not accept that if you tell it to them.
Not even close. But
especially not in the church, they won't.
Okay. Well, what is the Washington Monument?
Oh, that's a phallic shrine.
What is the Washington Monument? The Washington Monument proportionally is modeled directly after the
Egyptian shrines.
The obelisk of Osiris that stands in front of the Vatican. And the Washington Monument, guess what, is exactly 666 feet tall. From the ground up, it's 555 feet, and there's an additional 111 feet foundation below it. So in totality, the Washington Monument, the huge Egyptian obelisk there in Washington, D.C., its total length is 666 feet.
And now, how big is the one in front of the Vatican?
I'm not sure, but I would well, if proportionally,
I'd be surprised if they weren't the same size.
They're not the same size, but proportionately they're the same.
And isn't there also another one in front of the Giza Pyramid?
Giza Pyramid? No.
Yeah.
No, there's no. In fact, actually, the obelisk in Rome in the Vatican was taken from Egypt. That is an Egyptian obelisk in front of the Vatican.
Okay, but it used to be there. That's what I was thinking.
Wait. Christianity, Jesus. Why do we have an Egyptian obelisk in front of, the
Vatican?
The great Vatican temple to Jesus? It's like none of this stuff makes sense unless you start to go back and study the occult history.
Well, there's also other Illuminati symbols throughout St. Peter's Basilica that I've seen on YouTube videos, and I've also read about that. I don't have any documentation in front of me right here to share, but it should be pretty easy for anybody to find.
Right. There's also another Egyptian obelisk in London. It's called Isis Needle. The Needle of Isis. And, well, why would they put that in London? Someone says, well, it just doesn't make sense. If you know how to read the symbols, it makes perfect sense.
Well, these are symbolic. The monoliths themselves of the phallus, whereas the building that they're in front of is usually symbolic of the womb. So they're talking about a birthing here.
Right, exactly. Right. Well, it's once again, it's the old Isis, Osiris, Horus symbologies that are incorporated into.
Or it's maybe a symbolic way of saying the birthing of the age of Horus in its due time. Aeon or age, whichever way you want to word it.
Sure. Yeah, well, that was more specific to Aleister Crowley. He was told that after a ritual ceremony in the Great Pyramid in 1904, and then he immediately after that he channeled his book called the Book of the Law, and which became, and he was told that he was ushering in the age of Horus, or the Aon of Horus.
And now that would lead you to the next question. How long is an aeon or an age? Some people would say that it's a 26,000 year period.
I'm not sure. I can't give you a specific number on that one. But Crowley was told that there had been 2 aeons prior to this one. The first aeon was the aeon of Isis, which was matriarchal, and then there was the Aeon of Osiris, which was more brutal and patriarchal, and that in 1904, with his ritual sex magic workings there in the Great Pyramid, he ushered in the age of Horus, or the Aeon of Horus, and that's what we're living in now.
Or he believed that he ushered it in. Did he succeed?
Well, no, he was told. He said, "This is it. You have done it. You have opened the age of Horus." And whether he did or not, you believe what you want to believe. But if you look around, oh golly, the profound amount of Horus symbology you see throughout the entertainment industry. You can't have a Super Bowl anymore without an occult. A massive occult ritual, during the halftime. It's like, you start to think, well, maybe we really are in the age of Horus here.
Well, look at all these movies coming out with the recurring theme of the dying hero myth, which is similar to the Osiris story. They're just constantly repeated in new settings over and over and over again.
Over and over and over. Exactly, right.
And are they trying to embed it in people's minds, or, who knows? Now, I was going to mention everybody something we was talking earlier about, who's in the know inside of the churches. It's been my experience, and might be yours too, that usually pastors on down, and this is not etched in stone, pastors and congregations of local churches are not on the in the know. It's usually the people that run it on a corporate level and above that are in the know of the occult practices. Would that be correct?
Absolutely. Sure. Yeah.
So the people in the church, they think they're just serving God. They're feeding their flock, and they're, they're doing a bad thinking they're doing a good, in other words.
Sure. And then it's like, the great Freemason Albert Pike said, everything, truth is proportioned to your level of understanding. And, it's reduced down to what you, at your level, can understand. So the general public is given one story, which has been dumbed down so that they can understand it. But the real secret truths are always kept at the very, very highest levels. Now, I hope your audience doesn't perceive me as being anti-Christian, because I was raised Christian. My grandfather was a Christian fundamentalist minister, and so I've seen Christianity, from up close and personal. And my mother actually went to seminary. She ended up being a nurse, but she went to seminary. And one of the things that she shared was that when you go to Christian seminary, there's 2 levels of Christian teachings. There's the exoteric and the esoteric. There's the level that is designed specifically for the general public, but then there's a separate teaching that is for the highest initiates or the highest levels of education within the seminary. And she was rather put off by that. She thought, well, there's one teaching and that's good enough for me. But she couldn't quite wrap her mind around the idea that, well, no, this is the level that's just for the general public. And then there's this other level that is different understanding, but this is only for the highest levels within the church. And, once again, I say go back and study the history of the occult, and then you'll start to see how these secret teachings are incorporated into the highest levels within Christianity and so forth, and that never filters down to the general public.
Because the general public, again, they're crude, they're barbaric, they would just trample it under their feet, etc.
They would, right? It's like it's not for the uninitiated. The truth must be kept secret, and the masses need a teaching proportioned to their imperfect reason. That's what General Pike said.
But don't you think that maybe perhaps there could be some truth to that if the knowledge like this fell into the wrong hands, it could cause just as much destruction as it could good? Yeah,
I would agree with that. I did a presentation, back in 2010 for MUFON in L.A., and the presentation I gave was about the military-industrial complex. And I was up there ranting and raving about all these free energy technologies that the wicked military-industrial complex was keeping from us here at the general level. And my presentation was very well received. And at the end, this gentleman came up to me, and he said, I really enjoyed your presentation. He says, but I work for the military-industrial complex. And I said, gulp. And he says, you have no idea how dangerous these technologies are. And so later on, I went back and kind of reviewed some of the things that Nikola Tesla was talking about, torsion physics and so forth. And I thought, he's right. This guy was right. He says, in the wrong hands, this technology could make the most horrendous weapon imaginable. So maybe, like Albert Pike says, maybe this information can't be shared with the general public because it is so deadly dangerous.
Well, it could be also, like you say, you're talking about the power of creation. I mean, could you just exactly rip an atmosphere off of a planet and leave it dead?
Sure. You could do that if you were irresponsible enough. Oh, let's see what let's try it, see what happens,
Or they stole my lunch, I'm going to get even.
Bingo, you got it. So it's like, okay, well, maybe until we become more civilized ourselves, maybe it's best that some of this technology doesn't work its way into the general public.
And they're keeping it out of the general public. But then again, you got to go. That goes back to who's watching the Watchmen.
Right. Who's watching the Watchmen?
I mean, it doesn't seem to be in the best of hands right now either. Look what's going on around us.
Well, you could have, it comes down to something as absurd as this. You could have some garage mechanic tinkering out in his workroom and who accidentally, develops a super duper free energy technology, generator and doesn't understand quite the technology he's got, in his hands, and he blows up all of Seattle. You say, well, I didn't mean to do that, but it's like you're playing with extremely, extremely powerful energies. And it's like, even you stop about and think about just the atomic bomb. It starts out with one little isotope of uranium that sets off a chain reaction, and you can wipe out, whole cities. You can wipe out whole countries just with the teeniest, tiniest microscopic elemental reaction. So it's
and you thought nukes were bad,
right? And you think, okay, well, you're you're playing around with the fundamental energy power of the universe itself. So it's like, unless you know what you're doing, unless you know what you're playing with, you approach this stuff with caution.
Which I would assume then that would mean that the gods of ancient time that came to Earth, either from other dimensions or other planets, at least the ones from other dimensions, must have had a handle on this kind of technology.
Well, you ask, well, maybe they didn't have a handle on it. And you go back to the legend of Atlantis, and it's like, well, Atlantis was destroyed because they misused the technology. It's like, was it destroyed by God? Or was it just one stupid oops, I pressed the wrong button, oops, I did the wrong thing, and the whole continent disappears.
Hey, so George, I found the red button.
So, at the end of the day, this is also the same kind of dangerous technology you're potentially working with.
That would have probably been the ancients that was misusing it rather than the interdimensionals, though, wouldn't it? I mean, you would think, well, maybe not. I mean, they traveled all this way through space.
Of course, I don't know what really happened to Atlantis. It's like, but I've heard that story that it was actually, they were developing technologies they didn't quite fully have control of, and it just got away from them.
Yeah, I also hear that they were using crystal technology.
Sure.
I think they called them fire rocks.
Right.
But this is something else that it magnifies the energy that's already there.
Exactly.
But do you have a means to harness it while it's magnifying it? I mean, how much does it grow? Do you have control of it? Can you target it? Can you point it?
Right. And, well, of course, this brings up the speculation that that crystal, that magic crystal, that powerful crystal, is still underneath the ocean out there off the coast of Bimini.
Actually, that thought had occurred to me.
And it's like, and this still creates hyperdimensional mischief out there where ships and planes and so forth just, randomly vanish.
That area is also close to the 33 latitude.
Yeah, you got it.
And I also remember reading in Zechariah Sitchin's work that the gods are the ones who decided where sacred places were to be erected.
Sure.
And my guess would be they would probably want to erect them along latitude 33.
You would erect, things like the Great Pyramids and so forth in a place where it would maximize the energies of that area.
Right. Which I've also heard that the Giza Pyramid was at latitude 33, but I don't know that.
Yeah, Cairo is. Mm-hmm.
So that would go along with that,
mm-hmm.
the ley line, the energy ley line theory as well. It's got to play a role in this,
right,
whether we fully understand it or not, which is what Walter Bosley was talking an awful lot about. In fact, I wouldn't mind having you and Walter Bosley on here at the same time, because y'all could probably get a little interreaction going on that, in other words.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with him.
No, he's a pretty interesting writer. He's an ex-CIA agent that,
better yet. Mm-hmm.
He got interested in, latitude 33 because of King Arthur's Carousel was either at Disney World or Disneyland. I keep getting the two mixed up.
Mm-hmm.
And it so happens that carousel was residing right at latitude 33 where all the paranormal activity was happening at. So that's when he started studying it and putting two and two together.
Right. Well, there's Club 33 at Disneyland, too.
Never heard of that one, but...
You never heard of Club 33?
No.
Walt Disney was 33rd degree Freemason.
Okay, I've heard that he's been accused of that, but it was a false accusation.
I don't believe it. No, Walt was 33rd degree Freemason, and there's a club you go to, what is it? The New Orleans Square in Anaheim, Disneyland. And you'll find Club 33, and it's like you have to be 33rd degree to go into the club.
Well, according to
a great big 33 right out in front of the door.
According to some people that I've read their articles,
right,
they believe that not Walt himself was a 33 degree Mason, but the guy that helped design his park was.
No, Walt was.
Pretty sure.
David Icke David Icke went and visited the Freemason temple in Boston. And he said there was a plaque up on the wall. In fact, he had pictures of it, of Walt Disney, and there's Walt Disney's pictures on the wall, and around him was a circle of all his most famous cartoon characters, and there was 12 little disciples, cartoon
That's
disciples.
That's what I was thinking was disciples.
12 little cartoon disciples around this portrait of Walt Disney. So it's like, no, that sounds like he was highly honored in Freemasonry.
It very well could be. I'd have to do some more checking, but if they have a plaque of him on the wall, I'm quite sure they had a reason it's there. I mean, was it because he was one, or because they admired him, or a little bit of both?
Well, no, I think he was. I think he was very much a Freemason. Hollywood is all about Freemasonry and ancient Babylon occultism.
I know that George Washington was a 33-degree Mason, I believe, or 32nd.
Right.
Now, do we know about
Buzz Aldrin,
Capitol Hill? Is Capitol Hill on latitude 33 by any chance?
I don't know. I'd have to look at a map. I'm not sure.
If it is, there's another connection right there.
Absolutely, right.
Which is another thing that seems to be a common thread amongst many places involved with occults is cities on seven hills, like Jerusalem and Rome, and even where our capital is at.
Exactly. 7 is a very powerful number within the occult. The 7 candles of the
what do they call that?
The Hebrew menorah.
Menorah, that's what I was trying to think of.
7 candles, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, listen, I've been down with pneumonia for this last week. They sent me home on antibiotics through an IV. They put a pick in my arm, and it's getting close to time for my wife to run the antibiotic through the pick. So if you don't mind, I'm going to run this show short. However, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and I'd love to have you back again.
Well, you need to get some colloidal silver, and you'll start feeling better.
I've heard about that stuff. I'm just kind of nervous to try it.
I'm not nervous to try. I tried. I had last year. I had a bout with the flu that lasted 8 weeks, and I was sicker than a dog, and it took me forever to get my strength back. This last winter, the winter before last, I had the 8-week bout. This last winter, I came down with the flu again, and my sister, she's a nurse, she says, you need to take a teaspoon of colloidal silver every day. And I did it, and by the end of the week, I was done with the flu.
That's saying something when a nurse recommends it.
Yeah, and it's like, she was taking it too, and she said, this makes a whole difference. I was in no mood to be sick for 8 weeks. So anyway, give it a shot and see what you think.
Okay, doke. And with that, is there any last minute thoughts you want to share with the listeners?
Well, I just want to, as always, invite my listeners or your listeners to visit my website, which is jimnicholsufo.net, jimnicholsufo.net, and you can access all my blogs, and there's links to 7 of the videos that I have on UFO TV YouTube, which are very informative and I think entertaining, and that's about it. Just check it out and see what you think. I don't claim to have the last word in all this stuff, but I think there's a ton of interesting information that people will just really enjoy.
I think you're right. I know I enjoyed it when I was reading it last night. With that, then I'm going to invite everybody to come see me, and I folded it up earlier when my domain name wasn't working, so I'll open it back up. This coming, what's today, Saturday?
Yes.
This coming Wednesday, and I will be talking to Jeanette Raymond, and we're going to be talking about Now You Want Me, Now You Don't. And I guess that's a topic of her book. Be happy to have everybody here. And then Thursday, September the 4th, please join me at Revolution Radio. I'm going to be talking to Dan Willis about who's controlling America's perception of reality. And to be honest with you, Jim, a minute ago or a little bit earlier, I started to touch on you when we were talking about some of the stuff about the role of perception of reality and how that's being manipulated. But we've kind of ran out of time, but I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about.
Well, you'll pick that up with Dan.
Yeah, I'm quite sure of that. I've read some of his website.
Yeah, he knows a lot about this stuff too.
So, alrighty. With that, you have a good day. You have a good weekend, and don't do anything I wouldn't do.
Well, you get well, my friend. Okay.
I will definitely do that. And hey, let's stay in touch.
All right, will do.
All right. Thank you. You have a good one. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye, everybody.